traveler. You've come far today, not just in steps or hours, but in heartbeats, in the weight you've carried, in the quiet battles no one else saw. But for now, here, you've arrived. So let the world soften around you. Let your shoulders rest. Let your breath fall into rhythm with the hush of night. The walls can lower. The armor can be set aside. There is nothing to prove here. This story is yours now, not to fix you, for you were never broken, but to remind you of something you may have forgotten. A light, small perhaps, hidden maybe, but there, still there, a quiet flame, and it waits, not to be impressive, not to be dazzling, only to be seen. So close your eyes if they haven't drifted already. Let your thoughts grow soft, like snow settling on the earth. You don't need to carry the world in this moment. You only need to be here. Let the tension slide from your jaw. Let your tongue rest gently. Let your breath fill your belly like a lantern gathering its glow. You are allowed to be still. You are allowed to rest. And if your mind still swirls with the day, let it. Thoughts are just leaves on the river. Let them pass. No need to chase. No need to resist. Tonight we begin again. Gently. Follow me now. Into a forest, into a memory, into a beginning. There is someone you should meet. His name is Elion, and he has been waiting for you. Before we follow Elion's path, take one more moment, this one for your body. Let your attention return gently to where you rest. Feel the weight of your head, the softness beneath you. Let your shoulders drop just a little more. Imagine yourself removing a heavy cloak, one made of tasks, roles, expectations. Gently unfasten it and let it slide from your shoulders to the ground. You don't need it here. Bring awareness to your forehead. Smooth it. Unclench your teeth. Loosen your hands. Let warmth spread across your chest. Each inhale, a soft breath of life. Each exhale, a quiet release. Now draw your focus to your heart. Not the physical beat, but the space where you feel. And space holds a flame. Yours. It may flicker. It may feel faint. But it is there, not because of what you've done, but because you are. Inhale and gently tend to it. Exhale and give it room. You are safe to feel. You are safe to soften. The forest ahead holds no danger. Only reflection. Only kindness. Let your breath carry you into the story. Let your body rest as we begin. Elion had had lived most of his life within the stone walls of Emberlight Tower, a sanctuary for those who trained in the old ways, not with swords, but with flame, not fire for war, but fire for truth, for light, for warmth, for remembering. He was quiet among the others, not invisible, but often overlooked. He wasn't the fastest, the loudest, or the most precise, but he paid attention to the wind through the trees, the way embers dance before sleep, the small pauses in someone's voice when they were trying not to cry. While others practiced their firework displays and sparring spells, Elion learned to hold a flame steady through breath alone. Some called him soft, some thought him slow. He was both, but he was also steady and kind and watching. And one evening, the last of the autumn trials, the High Flamekeeper called his name. Elion of the Western Dormitory. Heads turned, whispers stirred. Elion stood. "You've been chosen to walk the hollowing," she said, at first light. He didn't know what to say. No one had ever chosen him before. The hollowing was not a punishment, nor was it glory. It was a pilgrimage, a journey inward, walked through the outer woods. Few returned unchanged. Most did not speak of it at all. That night, Elion sat beside the fire in the quiet hall, staring at the empty lantern that had been placed in his hands. It felt heavier than he expected. He wasn't sure if the weight came from the iron or from the question echoing in his chest. What if I have no flame at all? Before we follow Elion's path, take one more moment, this one for your body. Let your attention return gently to where you rest. Feel the weight of your head, the softness beneath you. Let your shoulders drop just a little more. Imagine yourself removing a heavy cloak, one made of tasks, roles, expectations. Gently unfasten it and let it slide from your shoulders to the ground. You don't need it here. Bring awareness to your forehead. Smooth it. Unclench your teeth. Loosen your hands. Let warmth spread across your chest. Each inhale, a soft breath of life. Each exhale, a quiet release. Now draw your focus to your heart. Not the physical beat, but the space where you feel. And this space holds a flame. Yours. It may flicker. It may feel faint. But it is there, not because of what you've done, but because you are. Inhale and gently tend to it. Exhale and give it room. You are safe to feel. You are safe to soften. The forest ahead holds no danger, only reflection, only kindness. Let your breath carry you into the story. Let your body rest as we begin. Elion had lived most of his life within the stone walls of Emberlight Tower, a sanctuary for those who trained in the old ways, not with swords, but with flame, not fire for war, but fire for truth, for light, for warmth, for remembering. He was quiet among the others, not invisible, but often overlooked. He wasn't the fastest, the loudest, or the most precise, but he paid attention to the wind through the trees, the way embers dance before sleep, the small pauses in someone's voice when they were trying not to cry. While others practiced their firework displays and sparring spells, Elion learned to hold a flame steady through breath alone. Some called him soft, some thought him slow. He was both, but he was also steady and kind and watching. And one evening, the last of the autumn trials, the High Flamekeeper called his name. Elion of the Western Dormitory. Heads turned, whispers stirred. Elion stood. "You've been chosen to walk the hollowing," she said, at first light. He didn't know what to say. No one had ever chosen him before. The hollowing was not a punishment, nor was it glory. It was a pilgrimage, a journey inward, walked through the outer woods. Few returned unchanged. Most did not speak of it at all. That night, Elion sat beside the fire in the quiet hall, staring at the empty lantern that had been placed in his hands. It felt heavier than he expected. He wasn't sure if the weight came from the iron or from the question echoing in his chest. What if I have no flame at all? The path curved downward again, steeper this time, leading Elion to a place the trees no longer grew. Stone rose around him in great ridges, like ancient ribs, and soon he found himself before the mouth of a cave. Its entrance was low and wide, wrapped in old ivy, the air cool and damp. He hesitated. There was no sign this was the way, but the lantern grew warmer, and so he stepped inside. At first, it was only darkness, then the softest shimmer, reflections of his own lantern bouncing against the walls. The deeper he went, the quieter the world became. No wind, no birdsong, just the hush of stone and self. Then he heard it, his own voice, not outside him, but around him. Not recent words either, old ones, forgotten ones. Words he'd said when no one was there. Words he'd thought when he was scared. I'm not ready. they'll see I'm not enough. What if I fail again? The cave didn't mock, it didn't twist, it simply echoed. Elion paused. Then with trembling breath, he spoke aloud, voice low but steady. I was afraid. And the cave replied, I was afraid. He closed his eyes and whispered, I still am. The cave, softer now. I still am. And then, through the silence, he said something he never had, but I'm still here. And the cave returned it, not louder, but closer. I'm still here. The lantern brightened. Later that day, the path opened again, winding up a gentle hill wrapped in golden brush. Elion's thoughts were quiet now, not empty, but softened, as if the cave had taught them how to echo less sharply. As he reached the crest of the hill, he saw a shape on a branch ahead, small, hunched, feathered, a bird, but not like any he had seen. Its feathers shimmered in soft shades of gray and indigo, and its eyes were wide, watching but not wary. They held something else, something uncertain. As Elion approached, it fluttered its wings but didn't fly. He stopped a few paces away. The bird opened its beak, but no sound came out. He waited, and then it tried again, a stuttering chirp, then silence, then a flutter. It hopped forward, then back, turned, then turned again. Hesitation. Elion slowly sat beside the tree and placed the lantern between them. I know, he whispered. It's hard to trust the ground when you've fallen before. The bird tilted its head. He didn't urge it forward. He didn't coax. He simply waited, and after a long moment, the bird fluttered once more, then lifted, not far, just to the next branch. Small flight, but enough, and as it rose, a single feather drifted downward. It landed gently beside Elion. He picked it up and tucked it into his satchel, a reminder, even hesitation can fly. The sky was beginning to shift. That hour between late day and early dusk, when the light feels like it's listening. Elion walked slowly now, not from tiredness, from care. Each step on the path was deliberate, like a vow not to rush through what mattered. He was no longer seeking a flame. He was learning how to carry it. The lantern glowed low but sure, its light no longer something he questioned. It was there. It had always been there. He passed a tree with initials carved deep in its bark. Someone else's moment of wanting to be remembered. He passed stones stacked into cairns, quiet offerings from those who'd come before, and then ahead he saw a bend in the path marked by a single word etched into the wood of a fallen branch. Continue. That was all. Not conquer, not overcome, not even arrive. Just continue. And so he did, with quiet courage and a steady flame. By the second day, Elion's steps had slowed, not from weariness, but from listening, from a growing reverence for the quiet between each breath. It was in that stillness that he heard it. Water, gentle and steady. Not a river, not a spring, something deeper. He followed the sound until the forest opened into a hollow. There, beneath weeping branches, lay a pool so smooth it seemed untouched by wind or time. The water reflected not the sky above, but the trees themselves, not as they were, but as they had been, in bloom, in autumn, in ruin, in fire. Elion approached the edge. The surface did not ripple, it waited. He knelt and peered in, and there he was, not as he looked now, but as he had been, a boy of 10, kneeling beside a classroom hearth, hands trembling as he tried to shape a flame. The instructor's voice had been kind, but the others' laughter rang louder. Another image surfaced. A lion, older, holding his first spell book, hesitating, wanting to ask for help, not daring to. More followed, moments he'd buried beneath effort and endurance, moments of small shame, quiet grief, words he wished he had said. He did not look away. He did not shrink from them. He only breathed, and as he did, the images shimmered, they softened, until he saw not failure, but a boy trying, a young man carrying too much alone, a soul doing the best he could with what he knew. A tear fell into the pool, and the reflection disappeared. In its place, light, not from above, from within. The lantern, still at his side, pulsed softly. He touched it, and it warmed to his hand like a heartbeat. And for the first time since the hollowing began, he smiled, not out of pride, but out of peace. That night, Elion made camp beneath an old alder tree whose trunk had split and healed in the shape of a crescent moon. He built no fire. The lantern at his side glowed softly, enough to light the space around him without disturbing the forest's hush. And just as his eyes began to close, a hum stirred the stillness. It was low, gentle, almost like wind, but not quite. A song. He opened his eyes. The melody curled through the trees like smoke, like memory. It had no words, only notes that shimmered like candlelight. He had heard it before, long ago, in the tower's quiet hallways. A lullaby the flamekeeper once sang to herself when she thought no one was listening. Now it was being sung for him, not aloud, but in the space between breaths, in the rhythm of the woods, in the flicker of the lantern. It wrapped around him like a blanket woven from dusk and kindness. Each note felt like a hand resting gently on his back. Each pause, a breath he hadn't realized he needed. The song said, "You are not too late. You are not too small. You are not forgotten." And Elion, wrapped in the warmth of it, let his body soften. He did not try to memorize it. He did not try to hold it. He simply listened, and in doing so, he remembered what it was like to be held by music, by silence, by something far older than fear. And that night he slept, truly slept. The morning light crept slow and pale through the trees, softened by a blanket of low clouds. A lion stirred beneath the alder, the memory of song still lingering in his bones, like warmth in cooling ashes. Today felt different, not lighter, but it's clearer. The path ahead had narrowed into a gully of moss and quiet roots. He followed it without question, lantern in hand, its glow steady but low, and then he came upon it. A tree, massive, ancient, once mighty, now shattered. Its trunk was split clean through, hollow at the core. Branches jutted like broken ribs into the gray sky. Around it, smaller saplings had grown in a spiral, reaching outward like protectors. A lion stepped closer. There was something sacred about it, not because it had endured, but because it had fallen and remained. He traced the bark with his fingers, rough, jarred in places. There were marks of lightning, signs of rot, and within its hollow, silence, but not absence. He sat inside it. The wood cradled him gently. Around him, the forest went on breathing, and here, Elion let himself fall apart. No drama, no weeping, just the slow, soft unraveling of the walls he had kept around his heart. He let himself admit how tired he was, how often he had doubted his place, how long he had pretended to be fine. The hollow held it all, not to fix, not to change, only to witness. The lantern resting beside him glowed softly, not in triumph, in truth. And when Elion finally stood to, Leave. He touched the broken bark once more and whispered, "You're still a tree." And the wind that passed through the clearing sounded almost like a sigh of agreement. As Elion continued through the hollowing, the forest thinned. The towering trunks gave way to a clearing bathed in pale gold, where the air felt different, not lighter, but listening. A grove. He stepped inside. At the center stood no monument, no altar, no grand symbol of meaning, only a circle of low stones, smooth and warm from the day's light. Elion paused, unsure whether to sit or stand. Then he heard it, or rather felt it. Not a voice, not music. Stillness. It wasn't silence, not exactly. It was deeper, like the hush inside a held breath, or the pause before a confession. He sat down in the circle. The lantern glowed faintly beside him, and nothing happened. No vision, no memory, no test, only presence, his own. For a time, he tried to find meaning, to see a message, but the grove asked for nothing. It only offered space, and that, too, was sacred. So Elion let the thoughts rise, doubts, questions, names he still hadn't forgiven, and he didn't solve them. He didn't push them away. He let them be. Some softened, some didn't, but in the semi-stillness, he began to realize something. He didn't need to be finished to be whole. He could still be growing, still be healing, still be worthy, even with shadows, even with doubt, especially with doubt. And as the wind moved gently through the grove, it carried no prophecy, only peace. Elion stood, and with him, the lantern brightened, not blinding, not grand, but steady. The trees returned, taller now, and spaced wide, as if giving breath to the earth itself. The air thickened with the scent of pine, ash, and something faintly sweet, like dried petals. Elion followed the path to a new clearing, this one ringed by stones blackened at the tips, and at its heart a fire pit, not just any pit. A circle carved with ancient runes, the language of the first flame. He stepped slowly to its edge. The lantern flickered once in greeting. No one was there, and yet it didn't feel empty. He knelt, a question stirred in his chest. What do I bring to the fire? The silence that followed wasn't cold. It was waiting. Elion looked at his hands, at his scars, at the lantern. He reached into his satchel and drew out something he hadn't touched in years. A folded piece of parchment. On it, the words of a younger Elion, a list of every reason he thought he'd never become a flamekeeper. He placed it in the fire pit. Then from his robes he drew a dried sprig of bellvine, the first plant he had ever nurtured in the garden at the tower. Small, forgotten, alive. He placed that too. Last, he took a deep breath and exhaled into the ashes. Not with magic, with memory. The fire caught. It rose slowly, without smoke, curling upward like a sigh. Golden, soft, steady. And for the first time, Elion didn't ask what it meant. He simply watched it burn. His doubts, his hopes, his gentleness, all of it together, and the flame did not judge. It welcomed. He sat beside it until dusk painted the world in lavender and smoke, and the warmth that stayed with him was his own. As twilight deepened, Elion walked in quiet thought. The forest around him was softening again, trees closer now, as if leaning in. The path felt familiar in places, though he knew he'd never walked it before. It was then he noticed the footprints, faint, just ahead of his own. Delicate impressions in the mossy soil, the kind that didn't come from boots. He followed them. They led him to a grove lit by fireflies, the air rich with the scent of lavender and cedar, and though he saw no one, he felt presence, not ominous, not strange, known. He sat beside a rock that had been warmed by the sun earlier that day, and as he rested, a whisper came, not through the trees, not from memory, but from within. I've been with you the whole time. Elion didn't flinch. He didn't look around. He simply closed his eyes, because he knew the voice. It was his own, not the anxious one, not the one trying to be perfect, the quieter one, the part of him that had watched patiently, that had waited behind every decision, every fear, every breath, the part of him that believed. And now that part sat beside him, wordless, unseen, but solid. They didn't talk. They didn't need to. Elion leaned back against the stone, and for the first time in years, he let someone, even if it was himself, simply be there, and the lantern glowed not brighter, but warmer, because companionship, true companionship, didn't need to prove itself. It only needed to stay. The path narrowed once more. Elion moved through a corridor of tall grass and stone, where the trees leaned in close and the ground began to slope downward. The lantern in his hand was no longer just light. It was warmth, weight, a presence all its own. He walked until the trees parted abruptly, and before him stretched a gorge, A deep chasm cleft the forest in two, its edges crumbling with ancient soot, and across it a bridge, if it could be called that. Nothing more than a series of charred stones suspended in air, each one dusted with fine ash. There were no rails, no guide, only space and the silence of deep places. Elion stood at the edge. A breeze stirred the ashes. His first step looked too far, the fall too close. But then the lantern warmed in his palm, and he understood. This was not a test of bravery, not of leaps or faith. It was a step, a single step. He breathed and stepped. The stone held. He stepped again, the second stone too. But when he looked down, the fear returned, the what-ifs, the echoes. His heart beat wild until he closed his eyes and whispered, "I carry the flame." A third step, then a fourth, and with each movement forward, the fear loosened its grip. He wasn't floating. He wasn't fearless. He was moving, and that was enough. When he reached the final stone and stepped back onto solid ground, the gorge behind him faded, not in sight, but in weight, and ahead, the forest opened wide. The sky, for the first time in days, was clear. At the edge of the wide forest clearing, the path became cobbled stone, worn, moss-covered, and warm underfoot, as though holding the sun's memory. Elion followed it to a wide circle where low marble columns marked the boundary. In the center blazed a fire unlike any he had seen, not wild or crackling, but slow and luminous, suspended in midair like a star brought close. A flamekeeper stood beside it, not the high keeper from the tower, but one older, wrapped in robes the color of ember and ash, her face etched with years of witnessing. She did not speak at first. Elion stood before her, unsure if he should bow, or offer the lantern, or say the right thing, if there even was one. But the keeper simply looked at him with eyes like candlelight and said, "You did not come here to become something. You came to remember what you are." She gestured to the flame. "It is ready for you." Elion stepped into the circle. The flame didn't burn hotter. It didn't flare. It welcomed. He opened his lantern and, without needing to ask how, tilted it into the heart of the hovering flame. A thread of light leapt inside, and there it stayed, soft, whole. His. The keeper stepped back. "You are no longer walking the hollowing," she said. "Now you carry it." Elion looked down at the lantern, no longer a symbol of lack, but a vessel of all he had found. He had not conquered. He had not fixed. He had walked. He had witnessed. He had softened. And in doing so, he had kindled. The fire at the center of the circle dimmed slowly until only his lantern remained, and the stars began to gather above. Elion stood beneath the stars, lantern in hand, heart quiet. The hollowing had not ended with fire, nor song, nor proclamation. It ended with presence, a soft knowing that didn't ask to be declared. When he turned back toward the path, it was no longer winding. It was open. Familiar trees greeted him with rustling leaves. The stones beneath his feet bore the memory of his steps. Even the shadows seemed gentler, less like fears, more like friends. And as he walked, he saw them, glimpses of the places he had passed. The mirror pool, still and luminous, the broken tree, surrounded by new growth, the grove of stillness, bathed in the hush of pre-dawn. None of it was behind him. It was within. He passed no test. He climbed no ranks. And yet he returned. Whole, the gates of Emberlight Tower came into view just as the sky bloomed with morning. Soft gold at the horizon, rising into calm blue. The keeper of the gate stood waiting. She did not ask what he had seen. She did not test his flame. She only bowed, and Elion bowed in return, not as a boy who had left, but as the bearer of a flame no longer forgotten. Elion returned to the tower, not in celebration, but in stillness. The familiar halls of Emberlight greeted him with soft echoes. He passed other initiates in silence, none asking where he had been. For those who had walked, the hollowing knew. Some stories were not told. They were carried. He entered his old chamber, smaller than he remembered, but warmer. The morning light through the window danced in golden slants across the stone floor. He set the lantern on the table. It glowed softly, not brilliant, not showy, but deep, steady. He placed his hand beside it and sat. There was nothing more to prove, nothing more to reach for, and in that space, he began to write. Not a record of what had happened, but a letter to the self who had once doubted he'd ever be chosen, to the one who thought he had no light, no fire. He wrote, "You were never empty. You were never behind. You were becoming. In the quiet, in the doubt, in the care you gave when no one saw. The words were not perfect, but they were true." And as he wrote, the lantern pulsed with the rhythm of a quiet flame, the kind that does not roar, but warms. the kind that does not demand, but stays. That night, Elion did not dream. He didn't need to. He was already living in what once felt impossible. A life where his light was enough. Elion stood once more at the threshold of Emberlight Tower, the dawn behind him. In his hand, the lantern still glowed, not as a symbol of triumph, but as a companion. He made his way through the courtyard to the quiet stone bench where the youngest initiates often gathered, nervous and new. A girl sat there now. She looked as he once had, unsure of her place, clutching an empty lantern, eyes darting to the others who seemed so certain. Elion sat beside her. He didn't offer advice. He didn't tell her how the journey would unfold. He simply opened his lantern and let its light shine beside hers. The girl looked at it, then at him. "Was it hard?" she asked. Elion smiled. "Yes, and beautiful, and quiet, and more than I expected." She nodded slowly. "Will I make it?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to her and said, "You already are." They sat in silence, not in waiting, but in warmth. And above them, as the morning light broke fully over the stones, the lantern between them glowed steady and kind, just as it always had, even when it had been forgotten, even when it was small. It had never stopped being enough, and now it would guide another,